edge there.
I adopted black shirts every day of my life. Maybe it was after college, but it's just so much easier. And I'll show up on stage in a black shirt, and I'll show up on this on this interview in a black shirt. It's just so much easier.
It's funny how you realize the virtue of that later in life. Bryan, the other occasional host on the show, and I went to high school together, and we had to wear a uniform, and everyone hates it at that age. It's so oppressive. You have to wear a button down and a tie. But like in retrospect, it made there be a whole lot of being 16 I didn't have to deal with because I wasn't being judged on like whether the t-shirt I was wearing was cool or not.
Whether you were sagging your shorts the right level off your hips.
Stupid. Hey everybody, it's the Data Driven Marketer. I'm Adam.
I'm Mark.
And I'm Bryan.
Welcome back for another hang in the data basement. Thank you for joining us. And special thanks, as always, to our guest this week, Bryan Kramer. He's the president and CEO of Pure Matter, the founder of Human to Human, and the spin-off H2H companies. At this point, I'll throw to you, Bryan, to say a little bit about what brought you here, or how you came to be here, I should say. What brought you here is our producer saying, hey, do you want to do a podcast?
Yeah. And it was a nice email too. So thank you, Jess. That was
producer Jess.
Yeah. So, I guess what brought me here is a deep question, but I'll go for the not so deep question.
Deep is fine.
Because that could go really far back. But I was always an agency guy in my life. I started in the agency world and worked my way through and up, and then eventually created a agency out of all of the great mentors that I had in my life. And then my wife and I, not only did we say we wanted to get married, we started an agency together and then had a child within the first 2 years. So it was like, wow, we're really going to make this all work. And we did. And so it was bumpy, ups and downs like everyone else over 20 years of having an agency, and really bumpy, like some major ups, some major downs. And we rebranded and kept up with all kinds of fun, interesting things. We and scaled at certain levels and then scaled back at certain levels. We're eventually working with some great brands in our second 10 years, MasterCard and Cisco and Netflix and all kinds of cool stuff. And then social media became a thing, and that was my shiny penny, and I loved it. And then and I started interviewing people like we're doing now, and that was like, oh my God, we can co-create content together. And then Human to Human was born out of that. And it was like, we were talking about it so much, but I was like, this gives us a chance to meet people halfway around the world. And so I started speaking about it a lot, and there's a long story there, but I'll keep that for later maybe. And so anyway, that was just my thing, and that's who I am. And that became kind of a next stage to where we took our life, and here we are today.
Mark just got involved with the podcast recently when he came on board.
That's
so
right.
He hasn't gotten to experience sort of what happened as we were warming up for the podcast. These are the best episodes, are the ones where we say, well, what are you excited about? And just start talking to the guests. And at some point I have to say, guys, we have to stop talking. We're doing the podcast. Like we need to back up, reboot, and start doing the thing. But yeah, you were talking about, the context of human to human, and you were saying that it should be human to Zoom to human now. And I think a lot of people think about that right now as a thing that's like, I can't wait to get back to the office, right? I hate Zoom. And NetWise, we've been remote as long as I've worked here, and 5 years before that. So I have gravitated to a job where I deliberately don't I get to continue to live in that digital space. And I've spent the last year in a space where I've seen the really interesting communities that start to emerge when a thing like a pandemic hits and everybody kind of gets like pushed into a new paradigm, basically. But yeah, I mean, that's a cool place to start. Just sort of like, what's been your experience of this thing hits that kind of pushes everyone to suddenly be like,
or for what,
physically distant, but actually socially we're kind of closer than we would be in the normal world sometimes. If you think about the, connecting the nodes of being able to join a giant, group of people across the country on a regular basis, that I just couldn't do that if I tried.
Yeah. Sometimes do you feel like, for entrepreneurs, who want to implement a human to human approach, are there modifications to your strategy that you would recommend given the new normal?
Yeah. Well, the modification was kind of forced on us. So, and that's the Zoom part. But it's interesting to me that we went through these cycles, like almost, if you look at it, I think everybody went through kind of like the period that an astronaut goes through when they go to space, where they get cocooned. And if you read about it, there's different levels of grief when they get separated from humanity. And then they go through adoption or adaptation of like, well, this is only going to last for so long. And so I'll just be okay with being in space alone. And then they start to realize, well, wait a second, we're up here for whatever it is, 10 days. How long is this really going to be? Oh my God, how am I going to do this? Now, for us, we didn't have an end in sight. So there was an extra additional piece in there of, is this really going to end? And so we didn't have that piece of, I'm going to get to go back to Earth in 9 days or 7 days left. And so we were left with an extra additional, whatever you want to call it, no deadline. And so, so there was that, and we didn't have each other to consult and be with, other than you saw birthday Zooms popping up all over the place and people getting on and probably connecting more than we ever did, I would say. I don't think that before that I'd ever had a birthday Zoom. People were like wishing me birthday on Facebook, but I don't think I had a 12-person birthday Zoom before. I think there was a lot of wonderful things that came out of it that unfortunately we're going to romanticize in 20 years, maybe 10 years. And so there's a shift in that, to answer your question, that I think will force people to be more human, and that's to take an approach of being more present. I think we're a little more present because you can see people on video with their eyes more. We have to be locked in more. Like, are they looking directly into the camera? Are they looking down? Are they looking to the left? Are they even paying attention to what I'm saying? And you get a little twitchy around that. Where in person, you're not so locked in on that. You're kind of like just having a conversation with someone, and we're not like, are they even listening to what I'm saying as much as we are when we're on Zoom? And so there's not that context is missing there. And so that's the piece that I think is the biggest awareness for us. And I think the big challenge there is just get on the phone and stop doing video. If you want to take it back to being more present, that shut the video down. I could keep going on this topic. So I'm I was on a call recently where the CMO of some other company just kind of said, on some level, no one is allowed to suck on camera anymore. Right. Mm-hmm. Like there's some level where you have to get to the point of, maybe that means people get coaching. I don't know. Right.
I think some people do. I think there's
for sure. Yeah.
It's
weird.
I have friends who are actors, and I actually started out as an actor here in Hollywood, and there's totally a thing now of like acting for Zoom. It's completely different than your normal kind of same principles as film acting, but there's another screen involved now. Right. So it's kind of it's really interesting how and then on a meeting on a deck or presentation, you're kind of expected to be performing, right? You're on video, you're in this kind of performance mode, where then if you're one of the receivers, you're actively listening. It's what you were saying, Brian. You were like, are they really engaged with the topic we're discussing? Are people following? Are they, slacking somebody at the same time, going off to find a resource on the internet, which is all just normal office behavior, right? I mean, like, you think about the things you normally do, are passive activities. Is you're on a conference call. Oh, is it my turn to speak? Let me put away Sports Illustrated. So like, I think now people have to be, especially if you're ADD, which I am as well, Brian, and it helps us to really focus, one screen, one topic at a time. Because if you're, in La La Land, then there, like Kurt was saying, there's this pressure to be excellent on video.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so we've got to give ourselves permission not to be, and just to be. That's one of the tenets I wrote about in my book, that to be imperfect, not to be perfect. The other two are simplicity and empathy. And if we're all three, then we can actually be our human selves, and it's actually focused on us, but also on brands. Like, if a brand could be imperfect, empathetic, and simplistic, then that would be our best human brand. But also, I also did interviews of over 250 people of all walks of life, including a lot of CMOs, CEOs of a lot of companies. And one of the things that I did is I took all the transcripts and I put them into a word cloud generator of why do people share with each other, and what do they want from all of humanity. And I did it for my second book for Shareology, and the why people share with each other and what do they want. The answer, the one big word that came up at the end of the day with all of these words jumbled together, if you've ever seen a word cloud, is connection. And it's interesting because when we got that taken away, when the pandemic hit, was the number one thing that we all craved the most was connection. So what you're saying is totally in line with that. That we all have to give each other grace in the moment, and in that imperfection of the thing that we want the most, which is that. And knowing that we're going to be imperfect, we're going to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, not have the right eye contact, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it when you present it as a problem, potentially, my answer is always kind of, but the solution isn't that the technology is bad. Like, let's get off Zoom. It's that you need to figure out a new culture for this new way of being that is a drastic shift for people like me, who didn't grow up like streaming video games like teenagers now do. So they're completely like that. The funny thing is, talking to younger people about this, they're just like, yeah, whatever. Like, it's not such a big deal compared to how the professional world is responding. But you're right. It ultimately kind of comes down to it's a cultural solution, not build a better Zoom thing. Yeah. It's like, you just have to understand that I work in some hacking groups where literally no one looks at the camera the whole time. The point is just to be there, and the camera is somewhere, and you're working on projects together. And occasionally you look if it's like, hey, I need to talk to Scott right now. But but otherwise everyone is there, but working on something else. And as soon as you know that, there's not this awkward feeling of like, I need to make eye contact anymore. I work on a bunch of projects where we don't even turn on the video. And then it's just a phone call. So we just deployed the solution you already mentioned in cases where it's like, I need to be lying on the floor stretching during this meeting or whatever. And like, fine. I couldn't do that if we were in a conference room. I mean, that's not true. I used to do that at my company. But like,
when you own the company, you can lay around wherever you want.
Else's conference room.
Yeah, it's easy when you go off. You can go off video and stretch, do some yoga, lie on the floor, and still be present. I think that's the key thing, is how do you stay present? How do we stay present as humans, then into entrepreneurs, marketers, whatever our segment is, in our specific level of excellence or subject matter expertise. How do we, I think about kids, the virtual learning thing, how that was such a shock to the system. I'm not a parent, but I have many friends who are, and I've seen, the weirdness that COVID lockdowns kind of put on the learning path. You know, I'm thinking if I'm having to adjust my professional workflow, the ways that I interact and brainstorm and collaborate for this visual virtual medium, you know, what must it be like for kids who are just forming their first friendships, their associations to authority, teachers, trust, you know, all those things that you get with in-school learning, then that's all flipped on its head as well. So I think we may have some interesting psychological studies in the next 20 years coming from this period of adjustment.
Yeah. Well, the present part of that has always been a problem in anything and everything. I actually wonder if we're not more present. Like when might turn that on its side and say that this actually made us more present. Like I think that this was a gift in that regard, because when the pandemic hit, I think all the Buddhists in the world were like, "Welcome, we've been waiting for you." We weren't ready for it. Like, oh my God, what do I do? I have more time. Like I actually started doing like art. And I'm like, what do I do now? I was bored sometimes. Like I'm like, we're talking about ADHD or ADD, and we're like, oh my God, I actually like started beating like these little crystal diamond things. I went on Amazon. I'm like, what do I do for a hobby? I'm like, I need more hobbies in my life because I stopped traveling and speaking because I couldn't. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So this presence thing actually turned up, and I'm like, well, okay, I got to ask some questions of myself of like, okay, what am I going to do with this? And to that now being present thing, then, well, how can we be more intimate with others? Like, how do we be present with others now in this moment? Like when you are on Zoom without having that lull, like we used to have, you know, that 7-minute lull you have with a group or with people that we always talk about at an event, and all of a sudden that
funny.
7 minutes hits, and so
pauses.
The awkward pause and all that. And the way around that is with a powerful question that you can go deeper in. And really intimacy is into me, you see. The deeper that you can go with a question, the deeper you can go with a conversation, and the 7-minute lull or any kind of lull goes away. So the more you can hit with powerful questions, there's hundreds of powerful questions, thousands of powerful questions. But if you don't go there with them and you just keep the conversation going with like you're not in true intimacy, you're in that third level, because there's 3 levels of listening, right? There's the first level of listening where you're thinking about something else while they're talking. There's the second level where you're thinking about what they're talking about, but you're waiting for it to be your turn, right? And then there's the third level of listening where you're listening and you're not thinking about anything else. No, you're not even thinking about what you're going to say next. And when it's your time, when it's your turn, you will just be present and know that you will know what to say. Now, if we were all in that third level in all our lives, can you imagine the world we live in?
That's the utopia, right? That's the dream.
I mean, I've given this advice to many people with social anxiety, including my wife, who is a musician. She's completely comfortable like playing instruments in public, and songs and compositions she's put together, stuff I'm terrified to put out there. But then in between, she doesn't like the part where she has to banter. And so we talk about this a lot. And the answer I always give people is just ask a question, right? Like, and I mean, I'm here doing it on the podcast. The podcast is great practice. You know, you wait 6 seconds, and if no one says anything, ask a question.
We've been going 20 some minutes now. We haven't had we're due like 3 awkward pauses. We haven't even taken those.
So I think, the one of the things that's, man, I have a bunch of notes, and it's like, okay, what do we have time left for? To keep chasing that thread. So the first place that I really became familiar with this, which I went to school for directing, but not for acting. And they have you take acting classes, though, and you spend a lot of time working with actors. And in that class, I remember getting over this hump of understanding that to be a good actor was to, like, everyone thinks, oh, you have to memorize your lines, and that's the hard part. The hard part is you have to run your lines so much that they're so internalized that you're actually listening to what the other person is saying. And the only thing that occurs to you to respond with is the thing that was pre-written. And so it's kind of easy, but like you really have to actively listen, or else humans like monkey brains watch it and go, he's not listening. This doesn't feel authentic anymore. It was really, it turned into an active listening exercise that like I've carried my whole life, even though I stopped acting promptly after that class.
Humans have a great nose for artifice. You know what I mean? Like we even so
bullshit detectors.
Bullshit detector,
be less
right?
Academic about it.
Yeah, there you go. Bryan, do you want to react to that? How do you?
I agree. I think we're all energy sensitive at some level. Some of us are energy sensitive at different levels, and so and that depends upon the level of where our background is and where we come from and what kind of things we've gone through in our life. And when you've gone through certain things, that will give you a basis for where you're going to see that bullshit show up. And usually it's going to come around how you make it about you or how you make it about them. And that's the deciding factor for where that conversation is going to go. And normally humans make it about themselves. And
but that's what I think. When you ask a question, though, it's making it about the other person.
Right. Yeah. Well, when you ask the question, it makes it about the other person. But I don't think that people make it typically. And this is where where things could change. And you could be a really powerful leader when you make that question about the other person.
I love that. I also like that you, referred to kind of the Buddhists kind of rallying around, in lockdown. It's like, okay, here's, this is kind of the time to implement your meditation. And I'm sure Buddhism got a big spike in interest. It's funny. I was just watching the new Sopranos movie last night, the Many Saints of Newark. Really cool.
Is it good?
It's good. Yeah.
I can't wait.
Yeah. It's worth a watch. And there's a great little doff of the cap to Buddhism in there where you least expect it. It's pretty fun. Yeah.
So the interesting thing that I alluded to before, right, that this is a remote company. This technology was starting to eke into the scene already. And the thing that happens when you hit a paradigm shift, like social crisis, like a pandemic, I think with technology, this is just the media theory nerd part of me, running away with, like, it just accelerates everything 10 years, right? So there's already a subset of kids that, like, when they talk about school, I always kind of say, the kids will be fine. I'm not sure the kids are stressed out about this. It's the parents, and that kind of, it's the place where the pandemic becomes such a monumental cultural shift, like across the globe, because we kind of have to look at the fact that, like, school is great for kids, but it's also built-in childcare. And we take that away, and it really disrupts other pieces of the mechanism that I think if we tried to figure out how to fix, instead of just rolling back to how it was, it would be a lot better for humanity in the end.
Specific to school, is that what you're talking about?
It's just an example of an institution, right? I mean, you could say the same thing about marketing, about about sales, like literally it just impacts everything, because what it really is a shift in media consumption, right? Like we switched from seeing people in person to having a media-based solution for how we do what we're doing right here, all being in our little meta virtual space of the three of us.
Yeah,
like
we were almost, we're kind of primed for it in a way. Like, we were kind of getting further and further away from the in-person. I think about like a TED Talk. Obviously, Bryan, your experience with keynote speaking, or like a professor, you're in a discussion room, you're able to read people's body language, you're able to actively listen and synthesize a thought from the reading material or what someone just commented on. And we've been slowly moving that, that in-person body language readable, almost improv based exercise into this segmented remote context, whether it's online learning or Udemy or YouTube creators. You're learning, I learned chess and guitar through YouTube instructors versus hiring a guitar teacher. And I'm sure that's how a lot of people are accruing their skills now. So it's interesting how it's kind of permeated work as well. It's kind of an evolution.
Well, everyone is so different. So I think that there's different and a unique way that each person needs to be addressed, right? So like in school, the school system is broken. We all know that. And so is it in companies too. Like, and so we just broke the mold, and now we're moving into remote, and then nobody knows how to be with that either. Like, do I demand they check in once an hour? And what are you doing at home? Are you constantly watching TV and playing Nintendo, or are you actually doing your work? And same thing at home. Like, why isn't your video screen on? And why as a student, like my son is like, and day one, they're like, turn on all your videos so that we can see you all on. And then day 100, not one is on. And the same thing for remote. Day one, pandemic, check in every hour on the hour so we know you're there. And then day 100, we don't care. We know you're doing your job. It's all good. And so it's just like, man, was this a gift? It's just, it's like, we needed this more than ever in so many ways. I mean, I'm not trying to make light of the pandemic because there's so many things that were bad about it, but there just was such a reckoning of freedom that came for what this is, and why so many people are now quitting their jobs, because it's like, I'm not going back to what it was. I'm moving forward. We're all moving forward into the newness of what this is going to be, and let's go with that.
To chase the analogy, the office is childcare for adults when most of us don't need it, and you can put together a completely competent company made up only of people who don't need it, and then you don't have to provide it. It's actually a great cost savings. But
it is. And it's also still needed for camaraderie to go in somewhere. 1 day, 2 days a week, leave it up to them. Give them the freedom to do that. And again, personalize the experience just like you do for students, because students learn differently, each and every one of them. So personalize it. Get a look into what that looks like.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting. It's that ability to personalize it that I think marketers are in a sense familiar with, but we don't have filter to these other institutions because the marketers and the teachers only talk in rare contexts. And it's like, but we're all trying to tell the story of something that possibly our listener doesn't want to know about. Right? I mean, that's marketing. Hey, I have a thing you might care about over here. Are you interested? Huh?
Or create
American
the need
history.
for that.
Yeah. But like the idea that you can have a more granular approach on a student by student basis is something I've been pitching for 10 years in terms of if we could electrify the teaching experience. And then you do other things for the social stuff, right? Like most of the implicit social interactions that I had during classes or in the hallway and all of my school experience were unpleasant and anxious. Mm-hmm. But then there were a couple things. There was like, I enjoyed my sport. I enjoyed shop class. Like you can reproduce those things without the school. The kids already do it themselves. They play League of Legends, like on the weekend. They're fine. The kids are fine. The kids aren't upset by this. I mean, there are some aspects where it's like, okay, get them in Little League or whatever, but like, or, have rec leagues, put more of the public school money. Well, the public schools need the same amount of money, but find some money for rec leagues that used to go into desks for the students and, seems solved.
Yeah, there's
but it
something
applies
about
to companies as well. So like we you need to find those replacements. And so if you're a fully remote company like us, like I'm largely in charge of this effort at our company as the kind of the head of comms, internal and external. We have to actively have a fireside talk kind of events, and you really have to work to pull the team together in a community sense on any level. It's just a little easier when you can just say, okay, everybody block the last hour and on Friday and come out into the bullpen.
I feel like it's you were talking about career or job pivots in the pandemic, Bryan, and I think that dovetails nicely with what Kirp is saying. I mean, I feel like from what I was seeing, and I changed. I came over to NetWise. Was this 4 months ago now? And I was starting to feel a lot of the same burnout, the sensation of, man, teamwork doesn't feel, it feels more like me work, and then I'm reporting back to the team. Like the idea of working as a part of a team in a remote context really requires some TLC. This idea of you're going to be managing your discipline, your projects, and then we need to form a process or a context for how we establish feedback or accountability and things, things like that. And it does take on a bit of a different feel when that forum is, a Slack channel versus everybody in a boardroom together looking at the pitch deck or the creative deck or the brief. So I think it's interesting. Some people just looking for a different way to work as a team versus, I don't like this product, or I don't like the service that I'm working for. It's, I want to find a better ecosystem. I want to find a better team context to work within. As someone who had changed jobs, one thing for me that I noticed was the desire for a more concerted teamwork kind of context, where I felt like in my previous position there was a lot of siloed work. Come back, and the nature of collaboration, I think, is a value point that people are looking for nowadays.
It definitely shifts a bit if you're not in the same room.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say I've seen the emergence of job descriptions like community strategist and stuff like starting to show up, particularly for like the open source crypto projects where they're kind of like, okay, we raised a bunch of money from all these people and we have to sort of wrangle them now. Wrangle is not a fair word. It takes work. It's like, I'd imagine it would be HR department in sort of a traditional like company structure, but it's way different with those other projects. And I think it ends up way closer to sort of a marketing effort, right? Mm-hmm. Or a coaching effort, honestly, to use another term from your background, Bryan. But like, increasingly it's a thing of sort of like, you got to have events together and you got to hype people up. And it's, there's aspects of the whole thing where transparency is important. I think like you have to certain values that if you can roll them in, you can be really effective with the new way that stuff is doing. And just everybody's happier. Partially because like, I don't have to be in the car for 2 hours a day. I can spend that time with my kid or outside or whatever.
Well, there's two things here that I'm kind of pulling out. There's a lot of things here, but there's two that are coming out loud and clear for me. One is community, and community is like a big piece of what everyone is craving to be a part of, and they don't know where they fit, especially as there's detachment. There's so much detachment right now from where can I fit in and belong, whether it's inside your company, whether it's inside a smaller group in your company, or whether it's within your community of customers, or it's your community of even just your life. Where do I fit into and plug and play into this community? And then there's the flip side of that. And how do I run my community? How do I build a community? How do I grow the community? How do I sustain a community and make it so that it's still human and it's still a community that people want to belong to, and I don't oversell something, or I'm not creating something that people then eventually want to leave that because I'm doing something that is self-serving or self-sabotaging. And so there's all these things that that we have to think of. And then it's just becoming like an animal onto its own. And now it's beyond what you originally created the community to be. And so community is a really, really cool, awesome thing until it becomes not so awesome, and we're afraid to start it because we know that eventually that community can grow beyond us, and it's too much for us to even handle. So then we never start the community because this is what we fear. And so I'm always I love community, by the way. It's my favorite. It's my superpower, actually, and I love community. I think you can grow a whole company. I think you can grow companies on just communities and never spend a dime on advertising. Shoot me for saying that. I know that.
No, there's you had a great blog post about that actually on bryankramer.com.
Did I write that?
Yeah. Good plug. How to grow your business without a funnel, ads, or website.
I know. Yeah, I know. I'm kidding. Yeah.
I always say that the human race's superpower is collaboration.
Yeah.
In the end, right? And we have traditionally done that through community level things that are either community government or like churches, but like it grows past that and everyone's kind of looking for the same thing. And the trick to crafting it is to make it, you will lose control of it. That's how it works. It's a system where you can bootstrap something through it, but it's going to grow past you at some point. That doesn't mean like you can't make some money or whatever on the way, but like, that's a thing to prepare for if you're sort of orienting that certain beast. You might, like, in our case, we, data-driven marketer is a community. Like, we're trying to sponsor a community. I 100% know as the current ringleader that it might end up out of my hands eventually. That's fine. We'll detach the brand if that's what's got to happen. But right now, I'd rather pull together the group of people that care about the same stuff than try to sell a bunch of shit. But the point is to get a feedback loop. And if we do it right, instead we can have a community of people who just tell us what to build. I don't even have to think about the product anymore. It's great.
Yeah, if you do it right, then people will thank you and come back to do business with you because of what you have done to provide them a high level, high value. It's really kind of the same thing and no different than what Google does. You go to their site, you search for what you want, and then you go somewhere else to the destination you wanted, and then you thank them for what they've given you by coming back again to search for what you want and going somewhere else. And the community is offering a place for you to meet someone that you want to meet that you didn't know you could meet, and you thank the person who gave you the life of the community. But people don't treat it that way. They see a community as, I can build this so it helps me. If you could build it so it doesn't help you, it helps them, and take the opposite approach, you will win. And I just can't get that into enough heads. I know that I'm like, come on, stop doing that. But that's the right approach.
It's the way to win long term as well, which is the place where I bring it up the most often. It's kind of like, it's also there is a lot of technical to do around the SEO stuff that we talk about sometimes, but I frequently point out that the core of that has to be a content strategy that ultimately actually answers questions for people, because everything else is just going to be some kind of technical scam that Google is trying to squash all the time because they're just trying to provide the answers for people. So,
I like to call it. It's like go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the to try to wrap this guy up in a reasonable amount of time. We're going to hit the last point that
seemed like we were about to dive into SEO. So I'm ready to
I know Mark's getting excited.
SEO.
Unfortunately, we're diving into the thing that I'm excited about because I think the SEO juice will be better right now, to be completely honest. Tokens. So like my experience with the community stuff was predicated on working on these projects that are tokenized. And so the community has so much more power when they're built into these systems where they really are involved in the economy of the product, because it's not like owned by some VC backed company that, means you have a board and you have all kinds of other people and they have their agendas that are sometimes misaligned. And like, and I'm bringing this up because you mentioned that you have human coin, which means you understand. And so it's still only like 1 in 5 people I get to talk this about. So I'm always excited.
Yeah,
We'll talk about SEO on the next one.
I'm the gumshoe. Break it down for me. Break down Human Coin for me, Bryan?
But yeah, what are you working on there?
Well, Human Coin is on the Rally network. If you go to rally.io, and anyone listening, if you want, and you guys, if you want a Rally coin, a Human Coin, I'm willing to flip you a coin for free, just as a gift for listening. And so it's you just go to Human. You can email me, Bryan at bryankramer.com. It's Bryan. I have to say this because my parents did this to me. Bryan with a Y, Kramer with a K. I actually said that to my dad last week by accident, and he's like, "Really?" I go, "Yeah, you did." Whoops. I guess you should know that, but I say it so often because they did.
I have to say P as in Paul about the P in my last name all the time.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh man. Paul. So it's on the Rally network. The Rally network is VC backed. And the Rally, but it's a creator coin. And there are, I think now maybe a couple hundred creators. When I first started, there was 75, and they're building it so that creators can wrap the coin around community and do. There are gamer creators, there are music creators, there are influencer creators. There's different art creators, all kinds of creators that are doing things around whatever it is that they're doing in life, and then they've built communities and are doing things around their coins to help either support what they're doing or to create more value for their community. So all tides lift all boats is basically what they're doing. And when the Rally network does well, everybody does well. Also, but we also have our own individual coins. And when the community of the actual coin holder does well, it also helps the coin holders do well. So if you go to rally.io/human, I think it's $human, or it's /human. I can't remember. Sorry. But when you go there, then you'll see the page. You'll see everything that you can do, all kinds of activities and stuff. And that's the whole network.
Awesome. We'll definitely link to that.
We'll link it in the show notes for sure.
And to be clear, VCs need to exist. It just means a thing about the relationship at the top of your company and where the money comes from and things like that. So, there are good VCs, like the ones backing Rally.
Yeah, this one is the big one that started LinkedIn and Facebook, and then the people that start Coinbase.
Sequoia? I don't know. I'm out of my depth. I'll cut that part.
and Andreessen.
But yeah, Mark, the kind of like quick breakdown is blockchain. The thing that's so cool about blockchain is it lets you do networks like this in a way where people are actually in control of the digital asset in a way that they haven't been before. Past that, it's technical explanation that I'm happy to jump into sometime, but we're out of time. But
bird's eye view is fine.
It makes it so that like when I have the coin, I actually have the coin. I can take it other places and use it with other stuff, and Bryan can't stop me, basically. Which it's so, in a sense, we're all marketers here. It's a loyalty program. It's no different than we've been running for decades. But because the pieces are composable and the underlying ledger is public, ultimately, you can do interesting things, right? And so the creative economy, the creator, like the not the economy, they have created a separate economy, not a separate economy, but a different and more supportive economy for creators out of this kind of stuff. Because hungry artists are always out there trying to find a way to get their stuff paid for. There's a great solution because it cuts out all kinds of middle people. So it's like Patreon is really cool if that works for you. If that doesn't work, there are ways to do it with even fewer banks.
I've got a buddy selling digital art. He's making more on NFTs than he ever sold. I think he sold maybe like $300 worth of painting when it was in a gallery, and now he's making he's clearing tens of thousands on NFTs. So, yeah.
But I feel like there's maybe a fun place to wrap it up, just by asking how the Human Coin experience has gone so far.
Oh wow, it's just amazing. It's been neat to learn something new that I have no idea what I'm doing, and learn along the way and go, oh my God, I didn't, really know that or understand that. And also I really see the future just not even of crypto, but like you said, NFT and blockchain and how all this is going to evolve. And I'm working with a company now that is mind blowing on just how NFTs will start to become real world with like property, and how we can all potentially even get in on funding land and take a little slice of land and fund it and have it built through construction companies that'll also be crypto funded, and they'll be building the land through NFTs, and the construction software will manage the entire process through blockchain, and the whole thing will be done on budget and on time because of all of this and all the tools and all the architects will come in.
Everyone will know instantly.
They will know instantly.
The books are open.
Yeah,
so I don't have to go, hey, can I see the spreadsheet that you may or may not have adulterated? Where this
transparency?
You mean the second set of books or the first one?
Yeah, exactly right. The blue ones or the red ones?
Yeah, it's mind blowing. So, like, what I feel like what I'm doing opened my eyes to what's possible, and I'm at the just this little small level of this really cool place where I get to actually, like I said before, all tides lift all boats. And when the human coin, changes like a way of community, and it really is all around community. And that's what I've learned the most. And I'm having a great time doing it. But the more that happens, the more it's opening my eyes to also what else is potential out there for what's going to happen. So yeah, it's great. It's been great.
Yeah, it's super. And the reason I love talking about this part of it so much, to the point that I'm kind of like, okay, let's get to the part of the podcast where we talk about this. I talked about the 10-year acceleration. Like, this is all sort of manifestation of this, like, moment in time brought on in part by the pandemic. That's like up there with World War II in terms of the shift I think we'll see in it when we look back from this kind of stuff. And one of the layers is you get pushed to the digital space. Everybody's trying to figure out community in that space. And then you're already figuring out community in a space. And like the crazy thing in crypto is it's mostly young people. So they're all super familiar with video games. So they don't even balk at the idea that the points are made up. Like, I don't care. Number go up. I'll sell it later. Like it's just so cool what I think will get done when you apply kind of the human to human community plus these layers of tech that are just starting to catch on because of this stuff. And so, anyway, thanks for coming on to facilitate this conversation, basically.
Thanks for having me.
This was awesome.
Ends up in an awesome place, and for sure we'll have to have you back so we can just kind of go further down the rabbit hole and skip all the intro stuff.
Yeah, we got so much more to dive in.
But yeah, where can people find you?
I make it really, really hard. If you go to bryankramer.com, I said earlier, that's with a Y and a K. That's where you can find me. Everything's there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you guys so much.
It's been another data-driven marketer. I'm Adam.
I'm Mark.
And I'm Bryan.
Take it easy, everybody.